Welcome to the Phillip Wylie Show. Take a look behind the curtain of professional hacking and hear compelling discussions with guests from diverse backgrounds who share a common curiosity and passion for challenges and their job. And now, here's your host, offensive security professional, educator, mentor, and author, Phillip Wylie.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Phillip Wylie Show. Today I'm very excited to have my friend KJ Haywood joining. KJ and I know each other from the local cybersecurity community and see each other at conferences and North Texas ISSA luncheons from time to time. And so I've been wanting to get her on my podcast for a while. And so finally the stars aligned and it happened, which this has been a time. It's been a while since I've been trying to get this done, and it's all on me, but finally we were able to get it done. So thanks and welcome to the show.
Of course, Phil, of course. And I made sure that I had your pen testing book out as,
Nice.
A promo. You guys need to get this.
Thank
So it's a great read. So you guys need to definitely check that out.
So how are things in your world?
Things are good. They're good. This whole AI, LLM world that we're living in, Gen AI, is shifting so much in our industry, right? I mean, my space is governance and compliance. So just to let the audience know the level set, my background is cybersecurity, but hyper focus is governance, risk, and compliance. So I've been doing that I've been in governance for like 25 years plus.
Wow.
But security, specifically security governance, about 11 years. And what I thought was that I was going to retire from that industry, and then AI hit. And I was like, oh God, okay, now I need to shift. So I do I do freelance. So my company is called Nomad Cyber Concepts, and I focus on organizations that are mid-sized organizations that are looking to pivot their solutions and look at either designing models or acquiring Gen AI tools to help them build their own either platforms or build out their client base. So I kind of focus on that now, Phil. And I'm getting a lot of individuals who are interested, but at the same time, like everyone else, I'm learning. I'm learning quite a bit. I just completed an MIT course, yay, on AI, no code. So now I know how to build models. I'm really a geek now, officially.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good, and it's a good inspiration for folks, because a lot of my listeners are people that are new to the industry or just trying to break in. So getting to hear those stories, because, people think I've had people talk to me career wise saying, I'm 30, I'm 40, I'm 50 years old. Am I too old to move into a different area? And one of the examples I have from my old podcast, I had someone on that was an esthetician. She spent 20 years in the beauty industry, went to school, got associates in IT, got interested in cybersecurity, got another associate's in cybersecurity, and she works as a pen tester now. So she's like 40 something and went into a new career. So it's just, people just need to realize that it's easier to move than what you think. And it seems like when you follow your interest and you're passionate about stuff, that, you do a lot better job, and it's more fun, because if you're going to spend 8 hours a day at a job, it should be something you enjoy.
I agree with that. My little journey is kind of bizarre too. I was in human resources before I was introduced to cybersecurity. I didn't even know what it was. Even though this is my second business, and my business prior to that was more implementation of software, right? Back in the day. And that was like in the 90s. So I really knew nothing about cybersecurity. And, I go and meet someone who says, hey, I know you want to do an HR job, but I'm looking at your experience and your background and the type of business that you ran before. Would you be interested in this job called IT governance? And I'm like, what? What's that? I have no clue what you're talking about. So I shifted from HR to cybersecurity, and I mean frontline. Like he had me managing applications, and then I did vulnerability testing, and it was just it was fun, and I didn't realize, like like your friend that you're talking about, I didn't realize that I had an acumen for it. But when I was able to, like, shift and go, oh, woo, I'm okay, I can do this. But you start geeking and you're like really geeking out on, you're like, oh yeah, we just had a vulnerability yesterday, and what are we assessing, and who's in charge of that, and how do we make sure that we deal with that, or we have an exploit, last night, a 0-day hit us, in terms of a vulnerability. So it's like, so you get involved in that, and then learning so much from other teams. For me, that was like, I loved it. Like you said, you got to really love cybersecurity. You gotta love technology because it's like 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Yes. Yeah, because for anyone that's worked in IT too, knowing, being on call, so you're, the week you're on call, you could get called in the middle of the night for something. So it's like you
Right.
said, it just doesn't end. And really to be good at
Mm-mm.
those areas, IT, cybersecurity, now AI, you've got to constantly be learning because there's so much of it to learn. I mean, it's just,
Mm-hmm.
I've seen people that can function well working 40 hours a week, but for myself, it takes me learning after hours. I can't just get it all done in 40 hours.
Yeah, I think our industry, at least from, I'm sure you've talked to people like this before. Our industry is really, a lot of us are introverted, like socially, we're introverted, and or we're like that hybrid. For me, I came from a different industry, but I certainly can say that my best times are after 5 p.m. After 5 p.m., it's like all of a sudden my brain wakes up. At 10 o'clock at night, I can write. And I know for some industries, it's different. Like, doctors, they definitely have the ability to have the energy. And I think with our industry, and I tell especially people who are transitioning their careers, Philip, I let them know, hey, are you sure you want to transition to this industry? Because you have to really love what you do. Um, because it's easy to get burned out. Very, very easy. I'm sure you have, I
Mhm.
have, many of our colleagues have. So it's very easy if you don't create that balance. You can get burned out really easily. So I always ask individuals, I don't care if they're coming from a different industry and they're transitioning, are you absolutely sure? Because you're going to have to really want to be up at 3 o'clock in the morning, because we had a breach, and it's hands on deck. So can you do that from time to time? Yeah, yeah.
And so
Health
from like,
and wellness.
yeah, it's very good. So what do you, as far as, you kind of mentioned people working better after at certain times, what do you recommend for folks to kind of adapt and be productive when you have say your circadian rhythms don't match up with 8 to 5? How would you recommend their workflows and how they could be successful and
what
thrive?
what I mean, again, I'm putting on my little former HR lens. What I would always recommend to people is, even before they even consider cybersecurity or any domain of technology, is be realistic about where your skills are and your acumen is, right? I even tell them, look at your resume, look at your skill set. Go back and see if that's something that you're really interested in. Do you find yourself researching things just because? Do you find yourself engaged with reading, or trying to play with some type of device or an app or development, or playing around with code? Do you find yourself doing that kind of on your side? Are there things that you actually do that really start intriguing you? And as far as time wise, I always recommend people to at least gauge where they are, like individually. because especially our practitioners that, you and I, we've talked about that before, they're on the front lines. They're working, those 40, 60-hour work weeks, and their best time is, after 5 o'clock, and they can shut down or they can turn on. But I also recommend people to make sure that you assess your own gauge of your own health and well-being, because you can make major mistakes. And if you're exhausted and it's 5 o'clock and you know that you're mentally shut down at 5 or 6, take that break, even if you know you have to push through the evening because you're working on something in particular or a deadline. That break, that mental break, is crucial. I mean, even for all of us, regardless if we're in the C-suite or if you're in the front lines, in some area of technology. So I, I don't take my life advice, take with the words that I'm saying, because I was horrible at that. Horrible. And I managed to fail over and over. And I don't necessarily mean in my job, but I failed with my health and well-being. And it's not that serious. No job is that serious of your health. You just have to know when are good times when your brain is like really working, like you're really on, and be able to balance it.
So since you're really into the AI stuff and you've been doing a lot of studying around that, what are your recommendations for someone that hasn't done any kind of AI or generative AI? What are some of your learning recommendations?
What I've always recommended for individuals now is get an understanding of the literacy of AI first. Because that's the first foremost. It's same with, remember back in the day with cybersecurity, a lot of organizations, they would hire, even HR people, they would hire, and they didn't know what type of person they were hiring, or, they'd say software developer, software engineer. They're like, I don't know the difference. The job descriptions would look identical. I think we're going to repeat that cycle in so many different areas. I'd recommend individuals, if they don't have the funding, to definitely take a look at all the free tools that are out there. There's Coursera, there's Cybrary, and there's others or there's Microsoft, there's Google, who are offering free Gen AI classes. They're certs, they're not certifications, but at least they're completion certs to identify where your level of expertise is and where that falls. If you want to learn no code, AI model design, there's opportunities to do that at no cost. And if you're an executive or if you're in the C-suite and you're like, okay, I need to understand this stuff, I recommend for them, Phillip, is that they actually get a certification at an institute. Mine was at MIT, and I did a no code, and that was hands-on learning how to build models, but also how to interpret those models to my colleagues that were in C-suite, right? How to interpret those models and communicate to the marketing and sales team, to the development teams. And so there's lots of different courses out there. There's MIT, there's Stanford, there's UT Austin. I mean, we've got a whole host of them. But for those who are just beginning, get your handle on Gen AI first, I would say. Definitely first, because you have to understand the difference between large language models, deep learning, natural learning processes, all of that. And that is a process. It's not an overnight learning process. It's going to take some time.
Very interesting. It's just amazing how AI is caught on, because I remember back towards the end of 2022, whenever Chat GPT came about and people were starting to use it, seeing all the things that people were doing with it. It's amazing. And an interesting thing to compare it to other technologies is I really can't remember anything accelerating the way this has, even with the internet and the .com boom and all that, really didn't move in advance as quick as this is, because you just saw, like, in a matter of months,
right,
all this stuff. And now you've exposed this technology to creative minds that haven't had access to it before. because the expense of trying to do AI now, it's readily available to the world. It's just interesting to see what people are taking, using their creative thought process and what they're coming up with. So it's pretty amazing.
I was doing some research when I wrote an article, and it was like, I think, and you guys have to read my article. It's on my website. But it was something around 24 billion in terms of activities for the Chat GPT. Was it 3.5 that was released when 3.5 was released? 24 billion in terms of activity within I think it was a 48, 72-hour window. And I'm like, that's insane. That's absolutely insane. People was just on it. They were just all over. And this course, this is all over the world, right? This is not just US based numbers. But, and then within a week, I mean, those numbers slowed down, and there were other Gen AI tools that were released around the ChatGPT 3.5. There were other Gen AI tools that were released, but the Microsoft one obviously hit by storm because they've been working on it for like maybe 3 to 4 years prior to the 3.5 release. So they had at least beta tested the model, and they were ready. The others had not had that length of time of testing. But you're right, this is imploding worldwide on all of us in terms of how do we get ahead of this as security practitioners? How do we ensure that when these data scientists decide to get hired in these organizations and they're being pushed to build models, how do we ensure that our data is actually segmented? How do we make sure that that data is protected? What do we do? And how are our systems going to be designed in terms of, natural language processes? Are we going to embed more LLMs into our existing tools so we can fight against the adversaries? There's a whole bunch of questions out there that our security practitioners, we don't have the answers for them. We're all just trying to figure this out as we're learning.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, because then you have to look at the risks of someone's in an organization using Chat GPT. They're putting sensitive information in there. Now it's out there within that ecosystem, and stuff can be exposed. So you have to really be careful. So I can really see like your areas from the compliance, because it really seems like one of the things companies are going to have is put policies around it and rules,
Right.
because if anyone can use it, you have to be careful with what they're doing. And it seems like it makes sense as well. It's going to be hard to prevent people from using it. So at least kind of back to the security awareness concept, you've got to train people on how to use these safely without, exposing company secrets.
Right, right. Or their own. I mean, they're
Yes.
using Gen AI tools at work, and they're using it for personal use. And they not fully realizing it may not even be, I mean, I know some people who are using Gen AI and the company hasn't necessarily adopted and purchased from Microsoft the secure version of a Gen AI tool, which obviously is more secure if they purchase it, and they're using these tools, and the data that they're placing in there, the information they're placing in there sometimes is their own. And it's IPP, it's IHP, it's IP, it's it's IIP, it's all the P's of the data that needs to be okay. All right, we're going to purchase this, but you're right. I think the privileged access. Remember, we talked a lot about zero trust and privileged access right back in the day. I think we're going to end up circling right back to that in terms of who has access to the tools in-house, who needs access to the tools in-house. And if we're going to allow everyone from the marketing team all the way through our developer teams, and that includes, HR, that includes, the finance teams, if we're going to give everyone access to this, What level of access do we really need to give, to them? And what are we doing internally in terms of protecting our systems? Are we building internally or are we purchasing? And governance is going to have to do that whole risk and compliance. And I think it's going to hyper focus on third party risk. I think that's where we're going to begin. I think 2025, we're going to hear a lot about large corporations saying, okay, now we need to upscale our third party risk assessments because now we've decided that we want our third party vendors, our MSPs, to help us with more enhanced learning models so that we can do whatever service that we do, healthcare, finance, whatever. So I think it's going to be interesting, but we still need to address vulnerabilities and model design. We still need governance around providing that oversight and model design, whether it's internal or whether it's providing oversight from a third-party risk perspective.
So what are some good security resources that you've run across for machine learning and AI?
I have, honestly, for security, I'm a big advocate of OWASP. If you are in security, you guys should know what OWASP is. OWASP is the Open Web Application Security Project. That's what it stands for. And they really provide the guidelines and standards for secure development. So software development lifecycle, right? That whole process. And model design is not too much different from the concept of oversight from a security perspective, right? It still has a life cycle process and a life cycle development process. It just may not be software per se, right? It's data being ingested into a model, and the model is actually learning from that data and being tested. So I think if we focus on OWASP as security practitioners, at least they have security controls, they have data security, they have, what else do they have? They have model in terms of providing model development and providing development oversight of model, and then threat modeling. We have that aspect of OWASP too. So I think if we lean on some of the standards that OWASP has put out, as well as the NIST AI framework, I think if those combinations, especially for businesses that are based in the U.S. or businesses that are doing business in the U.S., particularly the larger scale, mid-sized businesses, that's, I think, going to be helpful, a very strong, helpful tool to give us some baseline and say, okay, this is where we can start. Now we just need to level up in terms of our own knowledge and skill set of how are models designed so that our practitioners can ask the right questions to a data scientist or ask the right question to someone who is building a model, so they don't just throw a whole bunch of jargon out and say, oh yeah, I'm doing this and I'm doing this, and it's basically a sales pitch. And it ends up affecting the organization or unfortunately hurting someone, especially if it's healthcare.
Good points. And so we were discussing before the show about community. So I know you're a teacher, you mentor a lot of folks, helping people out. So what's some of your recommendations for people community wise, different groups you'd recommend, different types of conferences and stuff?
For my practitioners, I'm advocate for Secure World. They offer online trainings that also provide you CPEs. So if you have certifications, then I would definitely recommend as many online trainings that they offer. And they offer a platform from January through November every year. So, and they're free. So if you're looking for something like that and you're a practitioner interested in learning a little bit more about different areas, different domains of security or technology, big advocate for them. Also a big advocate for women-run nonprofits that are also hosting conferences, because I'm a big proponent on women coming into the space of technology as well as security, particularly security. So I know ONUG is one of those organizations. I'm sorry, it's not ONUG. It's a WIYSYS. I could be saying that wrong.
Yeah,
And please
WISIS.
forgive me. Yes, thank you. Please
Yeah.
forgive me. They are an incredible organization that is open to new practitioners. They have a great platform of speakers and educators and leaders that are part of their organization, women leaders. And I know some of our local C-suites are members of that organization as well. So I would definitely recommend getting into that. There's another leadership organization that's women based. Just putting a plug for women, is called a STEM, STEM leadership. And it's a global organization. So it is inclusive of women, from various backgrounds, diverse background, but that's basically STEM. So math, science, technology. As far as our local conferences, I think we talked about a few of those. I know we have InnoTech. InnoTech is one of a conference that comes to Dallas that also is open up for practitioners as well as C-suites. So I would definitely recommend those type of conferences. And if you're a leader, there's CISO XC that we have that comes to our conferences and other things. ISSA, we are huge in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. ISSA, I would definitely recommend any conferences, trainings that they're doing, because they're big advocates for practitioners and helping individuals who are beginning their careers in cybersecurity and or the technology space. And they're really ahead of things. ISC Squared is another organization you might want to consider joining. I'm the former vice president of that organization. And then for certs, Bill, that's sticky. That's sticky because my domain is governance. So AI governance has a cert. God, they have a cert called AIGP. It's brand new. Like, Phil, it came out April of 2024. They did a paper exam in Washington, D.C. It was over 300 people there taking a paper exam. Isn't that like crazy, right? We're in 2024. But it was successful. It's an international recognized cert. And when I say international, I'm saying Singapore, Japan, Brazil, Mexico. I mean, across the globe, the EU, European. It's an incredible certification to have if you are a governance practitioner and or if you're beginning your career in governance. I would recommend that cert and the C-RISC, which is the CCRC that's put out by ISC Squared. Those are certs for practitioners. There's other certs for, C-suites, CISSP and CISM, CISM. But for those individuals who are beginning their careers, I would suggest doing certifications that fall within your domain, and learn as much as you can about other domains. Don't and Phil knows this. Don't pigeonhole yourself. Don't do it. Don't do it. This is my 5th career, so I can tell you, don't do it.
Yeah, no. Yep, you can fall behind easy, and that's one of the things that's been fortunate for me. I really followed what I was interested in. So for myself, I started out in CAD drafting, found out about sysadmin work through IT, moved into that. Through IT, I found out about security, moved into security. While I was working in security, one of the changes that happened, it was fortunately for one of the CISOs that I had. We had a new CISO in this company I worked for. At first, we were all doing the same thing, and he decided to put us in different silos. And so I got put on the AppSec team, and that's where I found out about pen testing, got interested in pen testing, and just kind of followed that interest. And it stays interesting, and you keep progressing. Sometimes if you just, like they say, your career dies in the comfort zone. If you sit there and just find what's comfortable and don't, work to keep constantly improving, it's just kind of difficult to really thrive career-wise.
Yeah, and I put the plug in to your audience about your book because the reality is that pen testers are needed. That's
Hmm.
not an industry that's going to die. We're going to need you. We're going to need your skill sets, as particularly as AI and large language models begin to be more developed, more defined. We're going to need your help because we need to protect the data sets that are being used for those models. We need to start doing some segmentation. We need to assess our environments and the tools that some of these third parties are developing. We really need to keep our lens on that, and we need pen testers very much. So, you guys consider going into pen testing if you haven't already considered it. It's a lot of industries they say feel that are going to die, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for all of us to pivot our careers. And I don't believe in the concept of dying. I believe it's going to be similar to the shift with cybersecurity industry. Practitioners are going to have to basically pivot a little bit of their skill set and level themselves up. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think individuals who are coming and brand new into the industry, they'll have an opportunity that they wouldn't have had if AI did not hit the marketplace,
Hmm.
right? So I think there will be incredible new opportunities, but it's going to require all of us, whether we're boots on ground or whether we're at the C-suite, all of us to level up our skill sets, because we don't want our robots to take over our jobs, as they say. We know that's a fallacy. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not. So,
I thought at one time that's not possible, but you see now they have these robots, and then
yes.
now AI is making them do so much more. It's really
Yeah.
amazing. At one time you never would have thought some of this is possible, but just seeing some of the stuff they're doing with the robots now, they got AI to make it smarter, and it's pretty amazing. One of my favorite quotes around AI is because people are always saying, am I going to be replaced? Am I going to lose my job? But my favorite
Hmm.
quote is, you won't be replaced by AI. You'll be replaced by someone that uses AI.
Yes. And I like that quote. It's a very powerful quote, but it's true.
Hmm.
Which is why you have your podcast, which is why I'm teaching. We do our best to educate as many people as we can, casting our net as wide as we possibly can to educate those who are saying, I'm not sure which direction I should go. Well, artificial intelligence is our new future. It's like saying, I don't want to learn how to use the Google, I think some people call it Google Net, or they don't know,
Yeah.
so they're just like, this Google thing, I don't know how to use it. And that was back in the day. And they're like, I don't want to learn, I don't want to do anything with it. And now you can't, we're talking 75, 80-year olds, 90, up in their 90s, who are using the internet
Hmm.
fluidly. And I don't think artificial intelligence or any type of Gen AI tool, because there are going to be so many more that are going to be launched over the next, I'd say, 3 years. We're going to have so many. And we're going to have so many new no code learning models. So you guys definitely research no code. No code platforms is the new wave. They're it's a way of learning how to build models without learning Python necessarily. If you have Python experience, that's a huge plus. Huge plus. I would encourage, if you have it, just maintain it, continue to learn as much as you can. But if you don't, and that's not your acumen, shift to no code tools and start building tools and playing around with tools, because that's a skill set that we're going to need in the near future.
So we're getting down towards the end of the episode. Is there anything you'd like to discuss before we end?
The only thing I would say is two things. One is for individuals who are listening to this podcast who are in management level roles, who are in the security space, particularly. I would strongly encourage you to start thinking about governance programs, AI governance programs, and how you're going to build AI governance programs into your existing third-party risk programs, right? Because you're an InfoSec, for example. Start doing your homework and researching what that's going to look like. Hire someone like me, to help you go through that process. Because the third-party risk aspect is going to be, I believe, our arsenal to fight our adversaries who are going to use, and utilize third parties as their gateway to get to intellectual property, to get to data. So I encourage you to start building those programs so we can build policies and procedures and educate. I do have one final thought, and that's for your general group, and that is model design and data sets, the usage of it. We all need to understand what that means, and we all need to level up our skills with artificial intelligence literacy so that we understand what it is that we're doing, developing, using, crafting, whatever that is, our usage. I think that's important that we all level up our skills. And that there is no expert out there, by the way.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join me today.
You're welcome. It was fun.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I look forward to next time we get to meet up in person, get to have some more fun conversations. So always a pleasure to see you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you, Phil, so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to The Phillip Wylie Show. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, to learn more about Phillip, go to thehackermaker.com and connect with him on LinkedIn and Twitter @Phillip Wylie. Until next time.